There comes a time when rejection knocks at your door. It comes like a cold wind, an unwelcome visitor. You tried, but they said no. You loved, but they turned away. You reached out, but they refused you. And in that moment, you feel like nothing. But I tell you this, if you're rejected, accept it. Rejection is painful. It comes like an unexpected storm, shaking the ground beneath your feet, leaving you questioning, wondering why. You gave your best, but it wasn't enough. You reached out, but the door was slammed in your face. You knocked, but no one answered. You longed for acceptance, but all you received was silence. You thought the path was set, but suddenly it vanished. And in that moment, rejection feels like the end. It feels like failure, like you are lost, like everything you built has crumbled. But what if I told you that rejection is not the end, but a divine redirection? What if I told you that the very thing you see as defeat is actually the hand of God, moving you to where you were always meant to be? Look through the stories of old, and you will see that rejection has always been the tool of divine purpose. The ones whom God chooses are often the ones the world rejects. The very ones cast aside, overlooked, dismissed. Those are the ones He calls, the ones He uses. Because rejection is not a curse, it is a shift. It is the breaking away of the old to make room for the new. It is a closing door that forces you to move, a force that pushes you toward a destiny greater than you imagined. If you were never rejected, you would have stayed where you were never meant to remain. If they had accepted you, you would have settled for less than what was intended for you. If that door had stayed open, you would have walked through it and missed the path that was truly yours. Consider Joseph, the dreamer. He was rejected by his own brothers, betrayed, sold into slavery, and cast into a pit. He was falsely accused, thrown into prison, forgotten. If ever there was a man who could have given up, it was Joseph. If ever there was a man who could have believed that rejection was the end, it was him. But every rejection was not his destruction. It was his redirection. If his brothers had accepted him, he would have stayed in his father's house, never reaching the palace. If he had never been sold, he would never have stood before Pharaoh. If he had never been rejected, he would have never risen to become the second in command of Egypt, the one who would save many lives. What looked like rejection was actually God's hand, orchestrating something greater than Joseph could have ever imagined. Rejection comes to separate you, to set you apart. It removes you from places, people, and plans that do not align with your true calling. It is painful, yes, but it is necessary. When you experience rejection, you are being pulled out of where you do not belong. You are being protected from relationships that would have harmed you, from places that would have stunted your growth, from opportunities that were never meant to be yours. You may not see it now, but there will come a day when you will look back and realize that every rejection was a blessing in disguise. Moses was rejected. He was born into Pharaoh's house, raised as an Egyptian prince, but when he discovered his true identity, he was cast out. He was cast out. He fled into the wilderness alone, a fugitive. He spent years in exile, years feeling like a man without a place, years wondering why he had been rejected by the very people he was meant to help. But what Moses saw as rejection, God saw as preparation. God saw as preparation. If he had never left Egypt, he would have never met God at the burning bush. If he had never been cast out, he would have never become the deliverer of an entire nation. What the world saw as loss, God used for something greater. And what about David? He was overlooked by his own father. When the prophet Samuel came to anoint a king, Jesse paraded all his sons before him. Except David, his own father did not consider him worthy enough to be presented. He was left in the fields tending sheep, rejected and forgotten. But the one whom the world forgets, God remembers. The one whom men overlook, God calls. David was not chosen by men, but he was chosen by God. And because he was rejected, he was positioned for a greater purpose. The boy who was left in the fields became the king who led a nation. The shepherd who was cast aside became the warrior who took down giants. The very rejection that tried to bury him was the very thing that prepared him for his destiny. So do not despise rejection. Do not let it define you. Do not let it break you. It is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of a new chapter. It is not your downfall. It is your rising. Every time you face rejection, you are being redirected. Every time you are cast aside, you are being positioned. What looks like the end is actually the hand of God, moving you to where you were always meant to be. If you are rejected, do not fight it. Accept it for it is leading you to your destiny. Rejection is not just a moment of pain. It is a dividing line, a separation, a mark that sets apart those who are called for something greater. It is not merely an event. It is a sign, a distinction that reveals those who cannot walk with the crowd, those who cannot blend in, those who were never meant to follow the way of the world. The ones who are called are always the ones who are set apart, and rejection is the means by which that separation takes place. Masses walk the broad road. It is the road of acceptance, of comfort, of blending in, of going with the flow. But the ones who are chosen do not walk that road. Their path is different, and because it is different, they will never fully belong to the crowd. They will never fully fit in. They will try, but something about them will always make them stand out. They will attempt to follow the same path as everyone else, but the doors will not open for them in the same way. The things that come easily to others will seem like a struggle to them, and they will wonder why. They will look at others who are accepted, who are welcomed, who are praised, and they will ask, why not me? But what they do not realize is that their rejection is their sign. It is the mark that they were never meant to belong where they were trying to fit in. It is the evidence that they are being called to something different, something higher, something set apart. Consider the prophets of old. They were not accepted by the people. They were not celebrated. They were mocked, despised, rejected. Why? Because they did not walk in the ways of the world. They did not speak words that pleased the ears of men. They did not tell people what they wanted to hear. They did not conform. They did not bow. They did not follow the crowd. And because they stood apart, they were rejected. They were cast out, imprisoned, threatened, ridiculed. But that rejection was the very sign of their calling. If they had been accepted, if they had been embraced, it would have meant that they were no different from the rest. It would have meant that their words carried no power, that their lives carried no purpose beyond what was common. But they were not common. They were set apart. And because they were set apart, rejection had to come. When you are called, rejection becomes a part of your journey. It is not an accident. It is a necessity. It is the fire that forges your purpose. It is the chisel that shapes your destiny. Those who are called must be refined, and one of the first ways that refining begins is through rejection. The acceptance of men cannot go hand in hand with the calling of God. If you long for the approval of the world, you will forfeit the purpose you were meant to fulfill. If you crave the acceptance of the crowd, you will miss the very reason you were set apart. You cannot have both. And so rejection comes to separate. It comes to pull you out from among them. It comes to break the ties that would have held you back. It comes to remove the attachments that would have anchored you to the wrong place. Look at the life of John the Baptist. He was not like the others. He did not live among the people. He lived in the wilderness. He did not wear the fine garments of the religious leaders. He wore camel's hair. He did not eat at the tables of the wealthy. He ate locusts and wild honey. He was different. He was set apart. And because of that, he was rejected. And he was not embraced by the elite. He was not welcomed into their courts. He was ridiculed, misunderstood, cast aside. But that rejection was the proof that he was walking the path he was meant to walk. If he had been accepted by the world, he would not have been John the Baptist. If he had blended in, he would not have fulfilled his calling. His rejection was the mark that he was chosen. There is a cost to being set apart. There is a cost to walking a different path, and one of the first costs is rejection. It is the moment when the doors that should have opened remain shut. It is the moment when the people you thought would support you turn away. It is the moment when the place that once felt like home suddenly feels foreign. But it is in that moment that you must recognize what is truly happening. It is not the end. It is not a mistake. It is not something to grieve. It is a sign. It is the evidence that you were never meant to stay where you were. It is the mark that you are being separated from the crowd. It is the proof that you are called. Rejection is not meant to destroy you. It is not meant to break you beyond repair. It is not meant to be the end of your story. It is meant to refine you. It is meant to strengthen you. It is meant to strip away what does not belong and leave behind something purer, something stronger, something unshakable. It does not come to crush you, but to shape you. It does not come to ruin you, but to build you. It does not come as a curse, but as a refining fire. Fire is destructive to what cannot withstand it, but to what is meant to endure. Fire is purifying. Gold is placed in the fire, and in that fire, the impurities rise to the surface and are removed. The fire does not destroy the gold. It reveals its true value. It makes it purer, brighter, more precious. Without the fire, the impurities remain hidden. Without the fire, the gold is mixed with things that do not belong. But the fire brings separation. The fire makes it clear what is of worth and what is worthless. And so it is with rejection. It is a fire that burns away the need for human approval. It is a fire that exposes where your trust has been misplaced. It is a fire that reveals whether your confidence was in the acceptance of men or in the purpose set before you. If your foundation is weak, rejection will shatter you. If your identity is built on the opinions of others, rejection will leave you lost. If your worth is measured by whether or not you are accepted, rejection will devastate you. But if you allow rejection to do its work, if you do not fight against it, but embrace its refining process, it will make you into something unshakable. You will learn to stand without the validation of others. You will learn to walk forward even when no one is cheering for you. You will learn to build not on the shifting sands of approval, but on the solid ground of purpose. Look at those who came before, those who faced rejection, but were not destroyed by it. Joseph was rejected by his own family, sold into slavery, accused falsely, thrown into prison. Every step of his journey was marked by rejection. But that rejection refined him. It stripped away his pride. It humbled him. It prepared him for the weight of responsibility that would one day rest on his shoulders. If he had not been rejected, he would not have been ready. If he had not been refined, he would not have been able to lead. What was meant to break him only made him stronger. Moses was rejected by his people. He tried to help them, tried to defend them, but instead of gratitude, he was met with scorn. Instead of acceptance, he was cast out. He fled into the wilderness, where he spent years in obscurity. But in that wilderness, he was refined. He was stripped of his reliance on his own strength. He was taught to listen, to wait, to depend not on his own power, but on something greater. And when the time came, he was no longer the man who acted impulsively. He was no longer the man ruled by anger, by fear, by rejection. He was ready. The rejection that sent him into the wilderness was the very thing that prepared him to return and lead an entire people to freedom. David was rejected by his own family. He was left out in the fields when the prophet came, praise. He was dismissed, overlooked, counted out. And even after he was anointed, even after he was chosen, he faced rejection after rejection. Saul, the very king he served faithfully, turned against him, hunted him, sought to destroy him. But every rejection refined him. Every trial shaped him. He learned to trust not in the favor of men, but in the one who had called him. He learned to fight, not just with weapons, but with wisdom, with patience, with faith. And when the time came, he was not just a shepherd boy with a calling. He was a warrior, a leader, a king. Rejection is painful, but pain is often the tool of transformation. Diamonds are formed under pressure. Iron is forged in fire. Trees grow stronger when they withstand storms. And those who are called are refined through rejection. It removes the need to be liked. It burns away the longing to be understood. It strips away the false identity built on human affirmation and leaves behind only what is real, only what is true, only what is meant to remain. It forces you to ask yourself what you truly believe. It forces you to decide whether you will be defined by rejection or refined by it. It forces you to stand on something deeper than the shifting opinions of those around you. If you run from rejection, you run from refinement. If you resist it, you resist the process that is meant to make you stronger. If you avoid it, you avoid the very thing that is preparing you. Those who never face rejection never grow beyond their need for approval. Those who are never refined remain fragile, easily shaken, easily discouraged. But those who endure rejection, those who embrace its refining fire, become unbreakable. They are no longer driven by the applause of men. They are no longer swayed by criticism. They are no longer controlled by whether or not they are accepted. They become who they were always meant to be. Rejection is not the end of the road. It is the doorway to destiny. It is the very thing that pushes you into the purpose you were meant to fulfill. What feels like loss is often the catalyst for something greater. What seems like a setback is often the very event that moves you forward. What looks like failure is often the preparation for victory. The ones who accomplish great things are the ones who refuse to be stopped by rejection. They do not see it as a sign to turn back. They see it as a sign to press on. They do not see it as a reason to give up. They see it as the very thing that is shaping them, preparing them, directing them toward what they were always meant to do. Joseph's rejection was not a mistake, it was the path to his destiny. If his brothers had accepted him, if they had embraced him, he would have remained in his father's house, living a comfortable life, but never stepping into his calling. If they had never betrayed him, he would have never been sold into slavery. If he had never been falsely accused, he would have never been sent to prison. If he had never been forgotten in that prison, he would have never been positioned to interpret Pharaoh's dream. Every rejection was a step toward his destiny. Every closed door was a direction to the next stage of his journey. Every loss was a setup for his rise. He did not become a ruler in spite of his rejection. He became a ruler because of it. What was meant to destroy him only prepared him for the throne. Moses was rejected by his own people before he was called to lead them. He tried to help them, tried to stand up for them, but instead of gratitude, he was met with scorn. He fled into the wilderness, away from the very people he was meant to save. But the rejection that sent him into the wilderness was the very thing that prepared him for his destiny. If he had never left Egypt, he would have never encountered the burning bush. If he had never spent years in the wilderness, he would have never learned the very survival skills that would allow him to lead an entire nation through that same wilderness. What looked like exile was actually training. What looked like abandonment was actually preparation. He was not being cast out. He was being sent ahead. David faced rejection again and again, but each rejection moved him closer to his destiny. His own father overlooked him when the prophet Samuel came to anoint a king. His brothers dismissed him when he came to the battlefield. King Saul turned against him, hunted him, drove him into hiding, but each rejection forced him to grow. Each hardship made him stronger. If he had not been left in the fields, he would have never learned to fight lions and bears, the very skills that allowed him to take down Goliath, Instead of marking the end of their journey, it was the very thing that led them to where they were meant to be. Rejection separates you from what is not meant to go with you. It strips away what cannot be part of your destiny. Every no you receive is making room for the right yes. The ones who fulfill their destiny are not the ones who avoid rejection. They are the ones who face it, accept it, and keep moving forward. Rejection is not an obstacle. It is a pathway. It is not a curse. It is the storm that uproots you so that you can be planted in the right soil. If you never face rejection, you may never move forward. If you are always accepted, you may never know what it means to be truly chosen.